So now that we understand the concept of branches, okay, this is a very important. The next part that I'm going to explain to you guys is that law 8 that I was referring to about physical maturity and spiritual maturity. And this is also important to understand because what I can't remember what I was reading where a lot of I think now more young people are either living at home or returning home. So there's something that's going on because guys, umuzi should be expanding, right? You should the biggest thing that is affecting us is that you see, here's the thing why umuzi must expand. When you have 4 kids, let's say you have 4 boys, and they all stay at home, and none of them get married, you're going to have a problem of ukubangilifa. But the reason why these rituals were developed was we want to spiritually mature these children so that they can create their own branches with their own families and their own wives, right? Okay. Because then what happens is that your relationship with the homestead changes. In other words, if myself and all my siblings have our own home, and we have the homestead and my parents have passed away, because we all have our own families and our own home and our own spaces, our own branches, we begin to understand that no one is an owner of the homestead, but we are all custodians of this homestead, and we must all maintain it and look after it for the next generation. So because once you have your own space and your own area and your own branch, you start to look at you start to see the homestead from a place of a custodian and not as an owner. But when there's all 4 of you who still haven't left home, or maybe you've left home and come back and you haven't created your own branches, then you start saying, okay, who's going to own this place when our parents are late? But conversation for another day. Let's proceed. So young adults were always spiritually and emotionally matured prior to leaving home. This happened, right? And then the rituals ensured this. There's a lecture that I gave. I'm going to show you the details now after this slide. It's in the next slide. On this specific lecture, when I spoke about the spiritual significance of African cultural rituals, particularly these 3 over here, right? Let me explain to you. Before creating this branch, right, we need to ensure that this individual is physically, spiritually, emotionally in the best possible position to branch out, stay out, and then other branches to come from that. It's unideal for the child to come back. Yes, guys, life happens, economic falls, life fluctuates, money comes and goes, it's fleeting, right? Guys, please understand, there's nothing wrong with coming back home. If things are bad, swallow your pride and go back home. Right? If anything, it'll give you an opportunity to assess the spirituality and how spiritually prepared you were to actually leave the home and create your own branch, right? We begin with imbeleko. Imbeleko sets the spiritual foundation of the child. It means this ancestral spirit is reintroduced, because remember, the ancestral spirit leaves the ancestral realm, enters the human's body or the child's body, and now it's born. But now we need to reintroduce it, i.e. imbeleko, and then now the child can connect with Idlos. Once the branch is connected, once the branch has been established in this, and there's connection and foundation is set, okay, this child then needs to grow up, is going to grow up. So as the child grows up, there are going to be certain pearls of wisdom, nuggets of knowledge, and resources that this child will need in order to survive certain stages of growing up. Right? Umhlonyane is associated with the stage of pubescence. Right? Umhlonyane means that we are celebrating the fact that this child is now becoming a young adult. It's got nothing to, Umhlonyane has got nothing to do with celebrating a woman and her fertility and the ability for her to create children. No, we are celebrating the fact that we have someone who is growing, guys. Growth was always celebrated, but at the same time, we celebrate the growth and we prepare for further growth. because we're getting one step closer to creating a new branch. Hence, we have the ritual. And then once this person has passed pubescence, they are now, because at this stage, people will start typically looking to move out. And then umuntu typically only moved out the house when they were getting married or they are marrying, right? Yikho nje umemulo was typically done just before marriage. Right? But obviously times have changed now, guys. You can do it at 21, 22, 23, even 32, 42, guys. You can still do umemulu. Now, I'm not saying do umemulu the way the Zulus would do it. I'm saying if you are Pedi and you're watching this, go home and say, Goko Mkulu, what do Pedis do when it comes to coming of age? If you're a vendor, go home and ask them, what do they do? I'm simply illustrating the principle, the spiritual principle, whilst making reference to the Zulu cultural practice. So if you are Pedi, guys, go home and ask, what do we do? For instance, I'm not sure, I think it's the Susis, I'm not sure, but there are cultures, for instance, that don't do umcato. They have ilobolo, then they have 2 goats slaughtered, and then I think the husband and the wife eats a piece of the liver or something along those lines, and bakhlanganisa nelobolo. In that instance, I'm like, that's marriage, right? Other cultures do different things, you know? So what I'm saying is, don't do the exact same thing, but go home and check it out. Go home and ask your grandparents, ask your uncles, ask your aunts. And if absolutely no one knows, if absolutely no one has any idea, then you can follow the way of Amazulu. But please, guys, go emsamo and apologize and say, we are only following this way because Umland Wasekaya was lost. The history of the family was lost. No one knows how we did it before. Therefore, we kindly ask that you accept this way that we are doing now. Or if you are Pedi, guys, before you even do that, if you're vendor or Pedi or whatever, go ask your vendor friends, go ask your Pedi friends, go ask your Xhosa friends. Okay, so I'm going to take the question now. Thank you. I see it now. I just want to explain this to you quickly now. So the child would have a foundation set. The child would be spiritually mature. And only after these spiritual cogs of growth, I call them the spiritual cogs of growth, once all of these cogs are turning perfectly and have synchronized nicely and they're in harmony, is the child or the individual ready to leave the homestead, right? At this point here, once the cogs are going, and then the child is like, look, I'm ready to leave home. I've got my own job, my own this. I'm ready to leave. I want to create my own branch. Ubaba would then assist the child to create their own branch, and letting them know that this child is leaving. Please go with them. Okay. So that when that young man or that young woman has their own home, right, and their own children, they replicate the exact same thing. You see, the issue at the moment that we are facing in South Africa is twofold, right? In addition to leaving incorrectly, we have children that are spiritually immature in adulthood, right? So you have an instance where someone did not get umhlonyane or memulo, they did not leave home correctly, right? Maybe they may or may not have they did have imbeleko, but they were introduced to the wrong surname because issues happened at that stage of ilobolo or whatever the case may be. So, but then you've got these 3 problems, but then you're going to turn on and say, umakhelwane uthakathi ingane zami zonke ziyabuya, all my children come back home when they move out. Yabo. So that is the dilemma that we are facing at the moment. But the issue at the moment is that we're not facing it at first generation level. We're facing it at second or third generation. So in other words, the person who initially left the home spiritually immature and also left the home spiritually in the incorrect way has had 2 or 3 generations. And as I've said in one of my, the further down you go with generations, the greater the consequence. So if you're struck, you need to ask yourself, how did my grandmother leave home? How did my mother leave home? How did my father leave home? Right? Because essentially, if this is the homestead, right, and you left home incorrectly, this branch has not been established. So you are trying to build umuzi wakamkhize, but you don't have a connection or a branch to abakamkhize because your mother or your father who birthed you did not leave correctly or was not spiritually mature to create the branch successfully. Do you guys understand why I'm saying? I hope you guys are beginning to see why I say healing needs to go backwards, and we need to look backwards all the time and ask ourselves, what did I do? What did my mother do? What did my father do? What my grandmother did? What did my grandfather do? Okay, let's not be so quick to say mtagati. Yes, does it happen? Yes, but if you've left correctly and the spiritual foundation is intact, guess what? You'll be alerted to who to stay away from and who to be aware of. There's a question over here. Let me take the question. There's two questions actually. Okay. Towards, if no one in your family follows African spirituality and there are no customs that they practice, can we as pioneers start our own customs? E.g., I just had a son and I want to do Mbelego, but Ekaya, they don't do that. Okay, so the question to that is yes, you can start it. And the answer to, because you are the only one that believes, right? You can break protocol because you're the only one that believes. But you've got to make sure that you've gone through everyone in the family that no one else believes, so that you need someone, usually it's an elder that call himself. Do imbeleko for ingane yakho, okay? But imbeleko needs to be done where Idlos Lasekhaya resides. That's the first thing, guys. There's going to be a webinar I'm going to do next month. I'm going to focus next month on imsebenzi, specifically how to execute African rituals. An African ritual will only work, or especially in Belego, in order for it to work, where you introduce your child, Idlos Lagin, Laganzimand, must be there. All right, very important that's the first thing. So that in you are speaking to Ikaya, where you're doing umsebenzi, Idlos Lakona must reside, right? And can you start your own customs? You must start your own customs, right? That's why this is the Pioneers, called the Pioneers. The next 12 weeks, called the Pioneers series, okay? Where we're gonna, because you are a pioneer, you're gonna enjoy next week's one and the week after when we talk about building a homestead from scratch. Okay, so yes, do Imbelego. You have all the details. If you want to know how to do Imbelego, either consult our books or book a session with me, and I can take you through, the exact process. But if you're a pioneer, I'm glad to hear that you're a pioneer. Thank you for your bravery. Your children will appreciate it immensely, and we are here to help. So yes, pave a way. That's what pioneering is, starting something new. Okay, so guys, I hope we understand that spiritual preparation, right, is important for creating this branch, right? So now, but guys, do not stress if you have left home incorrectly and you are not spiritually mature. You can still fix it by going back and doing that which you do not have. So if you've left home already, but you know you don't have Imbeleko, get Imbeleko done. Guys, especially if you're a woman, umhlonyan is a big key, guys. What we're seeing is a lot of women struggle with jobs, and the ritual that unlocks it is umhlonyan. Umemulo as well. If you're a woman, try get that done. Those are the things you can go back and do, guys. Go back and do it. Okay, not the end of the world. Just go back and do it. So if you want, I actually did that